call to order the City of Rollingwood Utility Commission meeting for Tuesday, June 7th. We'll begin with roll call.
Chris Kirksey.
Jonathan Miller. Sir. Roll calls.
I'm Sam Attell.
Yes, you are.
Elizabeth Bragg.
Just in time for roll call. Good. We're on you.
Christopher Meekin.
Perfect.
Elizabeth Bragg.
Thank you. Moving on to public comments. Do we have any? All right.
Do we get to the virtual members
Do they
attending
do
also?
roll call virtually? Yes, they do. So let's back up and complete roll call.
Clark Wilson.
And Ronald Hasso.
Great, thank you. Now we will move to public comments, which there are none. Moving on to the consent agenda. The first item is the discussion and possible action on the minutes from the March 8th, 2022 Utility Commission meeting. The minutes were in the packet. Are there any comments or questions, or do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Seconded.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes
Aye.
are approved. Moving on to the regular agenda. This is a review of the utility appeals process and ordinance. This was discussed at previous meetings, so the appeals process information is included in the packet. Were there any comments you had? Ashley, to start that, please.
Not particularly. I will say, obviously the documents are here, so take a look at them, and if y'all have any questions, let us know. When we put this on the agenda, we had a utility billing manager. Since then, we've currently, we don't have a utility billing manager currently. Michaela is actually, well, Michaela sits there, but Miss Michaela has been running that for the most part and has been doing an awesome job. We do hope to have a full-time placement very soon in that department. So there's some chances for us to review this appeals process and streamline it and make it a little clearer. But if there were any questions you guys had that you wanted me to answer specifically, you'll notice in the packet we have two different forms. One is the leak adjustment request form, and then one is the water payment appeal form. Generally, the leak adjustment is how they come to us in the first place. So normally they come in and say, hey, we know we have a leak. We would like to do some kind of adjustment to our bill, or we find it when we're reading meters. So pretty commonly the public works crew will know that, wow, this is really high consumption for someone, and they can alert people pretty quickly. Or we find it when we're entering the reads. It'll say, hey, this is abnormal. So one way or another, that's generally how it starts. Our process, we provide the leak adjustment amount we can if they've provided proof of a leak. And then basically if they still have, they aren't satisfied with what we're able to provide, that's when it then comes over to an appeal to the utility commission. So we have those two forms here. We put together all of our background information, we put the history together, and then they would just come in and provide their reasoning for wanting the appeal. So we noticed that we had some new members in the last couple months, so we wanted to make sure that everybody was familiar with the process and had the chance to answer any questions. And also just to understand that we're probably gonna hopefully streamline this process a little bit in the coming months and just make sure that everything is very uniform that comes to you guys, so you have good information to work off of. So here to answer any questions if y'all have any.
Thank you. Open it for any questions or comments.
I have one question. As someone who actually had an issue in the last couple of months, or the last couple of weeks, where I had one of the new meters installed, and whether it's not installed properly or there was a fault on it, I ended up having the entire meter covered in water, and it was leaking at 2/3 of a gallon a minute. And Crossroads came out and they fixed it, and I asked them to please provide some documentation so that should I need to bring forward something, both as a citizen and someone who was trying to understand the process on the Utilities Council.
Sure.
And they said that they would send me some written documentation. I've now called them 6 times.
Oh,
I have not received anything. And so the communication with Crossroads as a citizen that calls them out on after hours, and may need to appeal the process with documentation from something that was a actual fault, has been rather arduous.
sure. I'm sorry to hear that. I guess, I can't speak for Crossroads, but if those come to our attention, we're more than happy to play that middleman for you and collect the information you're looking
Right.
for. I will say I don't know if maybe if they need to determine if it was on maybe your side or our side. So I guess if there was a leak on our side of the meter, there's a chance it didn't run through the meter. But if it was on your side of the meter, it did, and it would definitely warrant a leak adjustment. So I'm sure that they've worked all that out, but
Right, but
Um,
it's hard to know that as someone who sits on the Utilities Commission and gives feedback.
sure,
Because there wasn't any documentation that I could share with y'all.
sure.
And so, I'd love to try and find a little more due diligence and just for our residents that may have an issue or for our installation of meters that could have an issue.
Sure.
We need to be able to communicate with them a little bit more clearly.
Absolutely. And also that might be kind of a new learning curve for everyone, given that our last emergency M&O water wastewater services also did our billing. So they were joined on that end. So they may have been more attuned to when I have a billing issue, how this relates to what they've done.
Correct.
Now that we have it inside, in-house, and they're out, I think it's probably just more of a communication issue, and that we are more than happy to get that
Yeah.
information for
I
you.
just want to let Rollingwood know about
Sure.
it so that if a citizen comes forward, there's not a disconnect in some way.
Absolutely. We appreciate that feedback, and we'll definitely circle up with Crossroads.
So on that incident in particular, is that something that the city also knows about, that a meter was replaced or repaired? Or is it because you called in after hours, they came out and fixed it? Do we know if it came in here as well?
We know upon invoicing, or if city staff is called out. A lot of times for after hours, city staff is called out first. They are usually dispatched through Crossroads, but we try to send a staff person first, and then if they need to come out and do it. So they may have come straight out, depending on
They
the
came straight out.
severity.
They did not call city staff.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So I think-
sometimes it's a judgment call if they think it might be severe where they need to go stop it, ASAP. But if we have time to get our employees out there, shut pertinent valves, and then get them out there and save a little cost, we might do that sometimes too. But we find those out in the billing process. Basically, when we get invoiced, we have it broken down by address and service provided. So, but it is good to know, because I don't know if they would have noted on there resident would like adjustment for leak. That's important
They didn't, and it was
information.
more that I was concerned about the communication process because it was 9 p.m. on a weekday, and obviously these offices were closed, and so it went through
Mhm.
to them. They sent someone out after hours. I asked for them to communicate back to city council just so that I understood the process.
Yeah.
They did not. I have asked them multiple times since then ahead of this meeting so that I could bring forth all the detailed information.
Sure.
And I still have heard nothing.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, sorry to hear
So
that.
they were responsive on the initial call.
Absolutely.
Good response to that, but the feedback and follow-up, maybe just some comments and guidance from the office here to them about it.
Sure.
Would be helpful.
Absolutely. We will
Both for
take
the
that.
efficacy of our installation of new meters, but also should a resident have an ongoing issue
And it'll
from
happen
that,
with the new
because
meters coming in.
I
Mhm.
happened to discover it at that time.
Sure.
But it could have been going on for quite a long time before that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my individual issue aside, which I'm still trying to discover, the purpose of bringing that up this evening was, should that transpire again in the future with other residents?
Sure. Appreciate it.
I have a question. When Crossroads comes out to do a repair, is there always a representative from here that goes out and coordinates with them and documents what happened?
Generally, during hours, there's somebody there with them, a city staff person. And also, often after hours, a city staff person is dispatched first and generally stays there throughout the process just to observe and make sure everything is happening, that needs to, and that anything that needs to be relayed back to staff is. I'm sure there are a few occasions when they've just been called out after hours. It was an easy fix and they took care of something and we only find out about it upon billing. It wasn't something that had continuing, need for service or anything.
So when one goes to the Rollingwood website for an after-hours emergency, it gives you a telephone number. When you phone that telephone number after hours, it goes directly to Crossroads.
Okay. Yes.
It does not come through Rollingwood, and so therefore Crossroads will come out and not inform Rollingwood.
They generally dispatch from that line. So they do take the call in the event that it's a big emergency. We don't have a one on-call phone. So they have a schedule of when our people are on call and they are supposed to dispatch, but it is always a judgment call. They might already say they have someone right in the area. They may just go ahead and take care of it. But if it seems like it's something that's going to require us at some point, they generally dispatch us out there first. So I don't think it's always exactly the same circumstances, but that's the process usually.
So maybe let's just clarify that on
Of
the
course.
next meeting, to have a discussion with them to say, hey, here's the incident, but going forward, we just want to make sure there's better communication certainly on a follow-up.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions regarding the utility appeals information?
Well, I had an incident also. I'm at the corner of Inwood and Rollingwood, and I had a yard man out trimming the shrubs, and he said, you better come over here and look at this. And there was a huge puddle of water on the curb, my side of the property, not outside the curb in the street. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, I don't know, but he said, I've tried just, taking a bucket, throwing it away, but it just fills up again. So we called the city, and the Crossroads came out, and their first comment was, well, yeah, there's pipes broken here, but that's on your side of the curb, not on the city's street side, and therefore it's going to be your responsibility, but we're going to dig it up and find out. And they dug it up and found out that the city had run a big 5-inch pipe through that area on my side of the property, not on the city's, on past the curb. It's the city's easement.
Mm-hmm.
But so I didn't say they were doing anything wrong when they put that pipe in, but it was their impression that being on that side, it was my problem and not their problem. And so I was concerned. I happened to have a plumber in the house fixing a commode, and so he came outside and he said, he said, your meter's here and it's out over there. So he said, it couldn't be your problem.
Sure.
But somebody needs to document, my point is, somebody needs to document these things when they happen, so that a month later when it comes up and there's a big bill and somebody's protesting, there's some documentation of what was found and why.
Sure, of course, and they generally do. I think I actually remember that specific instance, and we did have staff there most of the time. I know I was there for a little bit of it just to see this mystery pipe that everyone was talking about. On those instances, so I think it's not necessarily the property line it's on, like you said, it's on the side of the meter that it's on. And I think generally when something like that happens, and it's like a construction crew, if they break it, we generally try to charge it back to them. So sometimes, on first blush, when they're out there making repairs, they might say, oh, well, it looks like this or something like that. But generally, if we can't prove that it was something that was, hit by some machinery or something, then, we fix it and we move on. So,
Okay. All right.
but we definitely will have documentation of that. And we try to make those notes between our development services, if they're related with construction. We try to make those notes so that when that bill comes in, we know how to handle it.
Yeah, I don't want to create a lot of paper trail. I mean, I'm not trying to get a volume on each deal that happens.
Sure.
We have far too many for that. I just want, a single page that says this is what occurred.
Of course. Yeah, record keeping is definitely very important in that instance, because then we also know what's in the ground for the next time. So.
This is Clark Wilson speaking. I just wanted to suggest, when you have the time, that it make it possible to file a utility appeal online. having the forms on the website somewhere which you could fill out online, and spare us trying to read the handwriting of people that have forgotten how to use a pen.
That is a great idea. They are definitely fillable, but most of the time we do have them coming in here because they have questions about it, and then they end
Right,
up filling
right.
it out here. But absolutely a great idea, especially when you're leaving a long description. It would help if it was typed and easy to read. So
Right.
But the capabilities are there now, it's just the nature of the people
Okay.
moving in that it tends to be handwritten, is that, okay.
generally, yeah.
Any other comments?
Does the billing software have the capabilities to flag an account if, for example, looks back at the history and in 1 month, a year ago, or whatever, there's a huge increase in water usage?
It does. That's how
Okay.
we find a lot of them. And actually, currently, because we don't have very much history in the system, at first it was like every bill was a flag. And so we had to kind of make those distinctions. And then now that we have a year of history in the system, it will tell you. I don't necessarily know if it looks at a year ago that month to try to, because I mean, it's different, right? Winter, different months. But I think it's probably closer just to the average, and if it looks out of the realm, then we would flag it. But like I said, our public works has actually gotten really good at flagging that while they're out there. I mean, they know y'all's usage probably more than y'all do. It's kind of scary. So
Good.
yeah.
If there are no other comments, we can move on to agenda item number 4, which was discussion regarding discovery of where issues exist regarding cellular service in Rollingwood. If I recall, yeah,
So, Phil McDuffie, 4711 Timberline, also on the City Council and your liaison to the Utility Commission. This is my item. Mainly, I'm just looking to try to brainstorm how we might find out where we stand as far as cellular service, how bad it is. We get a lot of people saying that it's horrible, and given the hilly nature of our city, it's not surprising. But kind of before we could address possibly fixing any issues, we need to thoroughly understand what those are. And so I don't know how we get that feedback specifically from our citizens, but I just had some basic ideas of, you know, who's their service provider, what's their address, when are they experiencing issues, that type of thing. I'm just thinking, you know, the SWIFT system could be engaged, maybe Nextdoor could be engaged, any other modes, maybe we could put something in the bills, that type of thing. And also, we might not want to do this in the middle of summer when everybody's gone as well. So we probably have a good amount of time to think about this and come up with maybe a strategy, or if we even want to do it, because I'm not sure how effective we will be at getting all of this information. But it would be nice to know, you know, we do have a problem right here in the neighborhood. And then we could look at how could we possibly address that? How could we serve our citizenry a little bit better in that regard?
so this was, and I'll open it up for further comments in a moment. This was discussed briefly at the last meeting where we talked about potentially sending flyers out. You've mentioned a few other ways. I think we're all, in one way or another, kind of supportive of the concept of trying to figure out how do we do that, and maybe a quick questionnaire. Who do you work? Who's your carrier, and can you make calls in your house, right? And being able to pinpoint kind of where that is seems like a good start. I know that we had talked with Verizon about them doing a survey, but you know they're not exactly the most responsive once you're not signing them up for emergency services. But with that, I do want to open up to any other comments or thoughts with the rest of the folks.
John, may I ask you, I know you did a lot of work on this. Could you maybe share, this was before Phil was with us, could you, because I think cutting to the chase, they're not interested. They don't care.
So Phil and I had an opportunity to speak shortly after he joined city council, I think it was right after you were determined to be the liaison for utility, it might have been right before that, where I kind of provided a little bit of that background just to bring it up to speed, and we talked about that a little bit, which I can review. So we've talked to AT&T. They were put off a little bit by a previous incident where they were getting prepared to set up a tower, and the city ended up not approving that after, I guess, a significant amount of work had been done around that. We also spoke with Verizon, who would come in to sell us on their emergency system for the police department, which we're currently using a different system. But during that, they said, oh, we can do all sorts of great things. We can twist towers and reach, re-angle antenna, and we can drive around, and then they never responded to any other inquiries reaching back out to see if they could, follow up on what they did. We also spoke with some private companies about the potential for, which would require us to build a private network. But even the solution that they had come up with would require you to be on that network when you're here, but if you were ever to leave, you would lose your call.
Drop off.
Right, so it wasn't, again, it's not there's not right now a turnkey solution other than seeing if we can get the individual carriers to focus on providing greater service to the area. There are things like small cell that you can try to bring in that are no longer require very tall towers, but they can go on light fixtures, and it's kind of like a mesh system. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I just don't know, what the cost is. I don't know what the timing is and things of that nature. But it does also seem like finding out where the trouble spots are, although some people will say everywhere. There are certain folks that have no service around their house, and others that are fine. And so again, when it goes to what is the cost of putting something in place, you could do all of that and someone could still not have service at their house when it's all said and done. So it would be helpful to understand where the problem areas are. It may also be helpful to understand just how invested the community would be in pursuing something like that. So not only does your phone work in your house, but do you care enough that it's a priority for you, and maybe they could give us some guidance. Certainly there are folks that are, and just maybe some additional information.
Yeah, if people aren't invested enough to respond, then maybe we just move on at that point, right?
No. I mean, it's a really great point, no question. And we go out into our front yard to talk on our phone because it just doesn't work in the house. But I think if we send out hey, how's your cell service? People are going to expect that we're going to respond and fix it, where we really don't have a solution because it's the carriers, it's not us.
Well, I would say, before we think about a survey, much has changed in the last year or two in terms of towers and who has them and the efficacy of them and so forth. And it's been, a little while since we went down that road. I would first want to look at, you can do a survey quickly of what the coverage is from any given tower, and it does vary super greatly by your cell provider. For instance, T-Mobile, good luck in rolling with. But others, have a greater efficacy, and many folks have changed because of that. And T-Mobile, as an example, only had one tower on Walsh Tarleton, back to bottom, and nowhere else in the area for like 15 miles. So it was super overloaded, which is what was causing the problem here also. But tower placement and usage has changed in the last period of time. So I think if we were, before going into that survey, we might want to take a minute to do the look that says where are they and how much are they servicing, and that might inform us also how to go out with a survey, because it unfortunately it's an ever moving target.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact dates when we had Verizon here. It was in 2021. It was kind of post the initial COVID impact, so things were slightly more open. That's my best guess as far as timing. And they had pointed out on the map where a few of the towers were. But again, I think it's the topography for the most part of Rollingwood, where you're kind of down at the bottom of a hill and you're kind of in that good luck. And so, the only way to do that is to put something nearby that bounces a signal directly into that area. And so, is it cost effective? Is it even reasonable to say that we can do that everywhere so that everyone has service? I don't know.
But to my point, the map makes a really big difference because Verizon has a much better coverage of household
Yeah.
than many other people. And that might inform our communication and decision
Well,
in
and that
terms
could
of
be
our
from-
feedback and, you know, because we may not be able to get people to come and invest this or that, but the infrastructure that is, you know, currently there, we may also have advice as to which function better within the city without having to make a major infrastructure change.
Right, my hope would be that getting information back as far as who has service and what their carrier is within the city. Of course, it requires quite a bit of a response rate, but would help us understand. Someone might be in the middle of an area with AT&T and say, I can't get service, and see that their neighbors have Verizon service. Well, you think they talk, but you know, you never know. And they'd say, oh, if I just switched, maybe I'd have service. I don't know the best method. There's a few. I just don't know what we think would be the most effective way of getting that information.
Question to everybody. There was a proposal, I believe, to put a repeater or a responder up on the.
They have one here for City Hall.
And,
Right, you
and
have-
that got voted down dramatically, as I recall.
That was the AT&T tower up by the baseball fields?
Yeah.
That, yes, that was a 100-foot tower that was going to go in, and the reason it came up was because it had to come into city council because they only have a 60-foot height limit.
But we
So it
couldn't
came
use
in
the
to say-
emergency tower? It's not high enough?
All I know is the history around that was that they came in to say, hey, we're trying to get an approval to go to 100 feet for this, and that's when people realized that this tower was going to go in, and that's when the uproar came in.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I believe there is AT&T equipment on a pole
Yeah,
or
our
tower,
emergency
right,
tower
right
actually.
up there, right.
Left over from when we,
Right.
1950, when we had to get under the desk.
But, right, but 60 feet to 100 feet is night and day. Like, that's
Yeah,
a
sure.
big, 100-foot tower is, yeah, and I think they were gonna put it over there where the dumpster basically is.
So it'd
and-
be ugly as can be.
Right, so that, I think it was just.
Even as a fake tree, it would probably stand
Yeah,
out
it's-
as
right.
looking. Yeah. Which is.
So, I mean, it's kind of one of those, are we willing to put up with the aesthetics versus the service or no?
Well, I like Elizabeth's idea. I don't know if we'll get that much responsiveness from the different carriers, but if they can provide us the data of where they have towers and what are the reaches, and perhaps even a map of, showing kind of,
We don't
circular.
even have to ask them, Phil, it's all online.
Okay, great.
You can actually do a search by carrier and see the coverage efficacy by carrier in any given geography, which is how I found out about AT&T.
Okay, great. That's first place to start, then, I would say, is we.
I raised the issue, I know, 2 or 3, 4 months ago about sending out a survey and saying, are you having problems with your cellular service? Who's your carrier? What's the problem? And I thought we resolved that would be a good thing to do. I suspect we have so many other priorities here in the city that it kind of got buried somewhere in the process. But it just astounds me that we don't try to accumulate. I mean, we call everybody and say, you need to boil water, and that's about the communication system that we have in the city. And that's kind of a shame. I mean, the internet is a really fine system that most people have access to, that we could say, what is your experience, and here's 4 questions to answer, and please send it back to us. But it's not only that, there's bound to be other commissions, there's bound to be the city council who've been wondering, should we do this, that, or the other, or how do the people of Rollingwood feel about it? And it seems to me we ought to construct some kind of a system, internet system, where we could just send that questionnaire out overnight. I mean, it would not be a big deal.
Yeah, we might be able to do a Survey Monkey or something like that, so, you know.
Agreed, but I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if y'all can see this from a big distance, but, you know, where it's dark red, that is, you know, 5G and super strong coverage. Do you see sort of the only little pink area right there? Well, that's us. And so that, you have the capacity, we have the capacity to do that brief survey on each of the major cell networks. And this is, you know, one particular cell server that people anecdotally tell me they have better luck with. So I can only imagine what the others look like. I think we may have an opportunity to have that overview without even needing to go through
Well, this
the
might be,
response system from, and then it's up to us to understand.
I'm thinking this might be a good opportunity just to have a breakout, small task force, you know, that's not a quorum, to kind of do some preliminary research and then come back and, you know, discuss it at the next meeting or something like that, like, and I'm certainly available for that if anybody else wants to jump on, being we can't create a quorum, so we have to make sure that we can only have maximum 4 of you could volunteer, or 3 of you could volunteer, but
I'm happy to do that. I just think it's important to, you
Yeah.
know, get our baseline, because that will also help us with the intent of whatever reach out we want to do to the
Yeah.
community. You know, to have our baseline understanding ahead of that might be helpful,
right.
because that's been done, but it's been a little long.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not so bad. I know, I mean, well, I've had Verizon since I got here, and the only place I lose calls is when I drive past City Hall.
And I have
That's
T-Mobile,
the
and
dead
it's
zone.
fine for me, but I'm at the top of the hill.
Right. I
Right.
couldn't get a T-Mobile call to save my life, and had
There.
3 repeaters in my house on every floor.
Right. So,
So there's, you know, I think there's some macro work we can do before we go into the micro survey work. That is, I know it's been done before, but it's been
right,
a minute.
right. No, it changes rapidly. I'm willing to get with you. I don't know if anybody else is willing to jump up, but you and I could
Happy to be of
go
service.
after it. Okay.
Do we even need to make a motion for, that doesn't even need to be.
Upon the next meeting, whenever we do the, you know, call for attendance, if y'all have a report ready, just let us know.
Sounds good.
Fine.
And we, probably one other, if anyone else, probably one other person thinks about, they'd get excited about it, please reach out to Phil, or Elizabeth and let them know. Perfect.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to, regular agenda item number 5, which is receipt of the 2021 Consumer Confidence Report as prepared by Crossroads Utility Services. I think this was put on following the last meeting, there was a request for this information to include.
Right, yes, and I will let y'all know, this has been posted to our website. It was due, or it is due July 1st every year, to be delivered to residents as well as posted to the website. This year it was on the bill that we sent out, early this week. There was a link to it, and it's also posted to our website there. And so it's, filed and ready to go, but I know there was a request to review it when it came in. And this was the first meeting we had had since then, so, we have it on here to, you know, show receipt, and if, of course, there are any questions, I'm happy to forward those on to the experts who deal with all the numbers and all of
I
that.
hate to show my ignorance, but what is it?
It's the water quality report every year, so TCEQ requires that it is filed. All of our information pretty much comes from the city of Austin since we're on their water system. But we do also take our own samples, Crossroads that does, you know, our other emergency maintenance and operations. They do also maintain our system, so they perform all the necessary samples, not only when there's been a boil water, but just very regularly, I think, probably daily, I don't know for sure, but.
Is that sampling throughout the community or just for the inbound from, right at where, you know, City of Austin water meets?
That's a good question. I know when there is, if it's associated with some kind of break or something where there was a boil water or a potential boil water, they sample at the site. But as far as their regular testing, I'm not sure where they take those samples. But
So
I can
Yeah,
find out.
this is Clark Wilson. I think there are designated houses, including my own, where they come and take water samples. So we've been a designated sampling house for decades.
Yes, so the city of Austin takes it from certain areas, which is a little disconcerting for us because they take it from, major water retention and lake sources, which doesn't necessarily, have the full picture for us because it goes through our super aged pipes, which has an impact. And so we do have individual homes where we take water samples on a regular basis. But we had some things in the last July 1 report that have not really been addressed by Crossroads. And so I think it would be beholden to this group to compare those two reports and have a little bit deeper look. And our water quality reports for the last X years, there have been a few things that have been exactly on the line of whether there was safe efficacy, and it has been sorry, I'm losing a word, but it has been registered at the exact point, 100th of safety on a couple of things for the last sort of 11 years in a row, and there's normally some fluctuation, and so for it to be there, I just don't know that we've done a real deep dive on the comparisons of how the City of Austin water coming through our own system is having some consistent safety. And I would love for this commission to have a look at that with our newest report.
So again, so just so I understand, so City of Austin tests their water and then they test our water from various houses, but they complete the test and send us the report?
City of Austin doesn't test our houses. City of Austin tests their sources, and then they provide a report. We test some of our houses through Crossroads
So
separately.
So Crossroads is doing collection and sending it out, and then who creates this report?
The CCR, the Consumer Confidence Report, is prepared by Crossroads with mostly information from the City of Austin. I can't tell you for sure what comes from the report that they give us and what comes from our own samples, but I'd be happy to forward on any questions to.
Well, there's a lot of stuff on here that under the year it has COA. I'm assuming that's City of Austin, and that's where
Sure.
it's coming from. And then the other stuff would be coming from our system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I think there's two levels of issues. I mean, the City of Austin has had some egregious issues on their water quality, and we have some infrastructure issues that have not been thoroughly brought to light, which are also water quality issues. And so we have, you know, two different points of concern that we have not knitted together and really dug into, because we've had, you know, a lot of change in our monitoring system. We've had change in our public works. We've had, you know, so many moving parts that it just, the baton has not necessarily been passed easily. But should be looked at more closely, because there were enough issues that we had to report out to the public a year ago, that there were things outside of the safe norms, and this July 1 report may or may not repeat that.
What would and again, this is ignorance of my own, what is a process for saying, well, we would like to have a better understanding of our water quality because we'd like a non-biased approach where City of Austin is giving us information, but we want to make sure we understand what's in our water system, and that could be Crossroads. Is that another organization that you bring in to do a water assessment? I'm just trying to understand what are processes for this type of follow-up work.
That's a great question. I'm sure Crossroads, if they can't provide that, I'm sure they could point us in the direction of who could. We also, our new public works superintendent might have some ideas on, you know, where if we need to go further into looking into this report and discussing what's on it and potentially, you know, moving forward with that. I just unfortunately don't, you know, I would need to consult the experts to figure out what it is we need to do if there is any action.
But I would say that it starts here.
Well, I'm not a water expert, so I don't know.
No,
what
but
the
I
next
think
step
the
is.
questions start here in this Utilities Commission to say, this is important to us to understand, because there have been so many moving parts that things have not been followed up, and that it is our purview to do that, and so
So we're saying historically there have been either dangerous levels or levels that seem to be consistently the same, which might raise eyebrows that we want
Correct.
to look into.
And then when I dug into it at one stage and was trying to find some historic things, I found that actually the water reports hadn't even been published by the city and this predates you actually, for a number of years.
So they were filed with TCQ because they'd have to be, but they weren't made available
But they
to the
weren't
public.
published, and then when they were published, there were concerning things, and
That
those
weren't.
things had not been published out to the public on the July reports, which are supposed to be published. We had an issue in our public works department, and you know, unfortunately, people were dismissed.
Yeah.
But
Do we have all the historical reports that we filed, but are they now? And maybe you've pulled them because you requested them, but
the
they're
majority of them are now
They're on the website
on
now.
the website now.
Yes.
They
Okay.
just were not for a number of years until I discovered that and called and asked to find
I
them.
don't know that that's a requirement, and I've always gotten them in my water bill in July. And I think that's the requirement, is that you get the report. And I've always gotten the report, and I've always looked to see that we're under all the things, and we tend to be under all the things. Yeah, have we had problems? Sure. And we have boil stuff? Sure. I'm not opposed
I've
to
never paid
independent
attention to
testing,
things.
that's fine too, make sure it's fine, but,
Well, I'm not sure what we've just said, frankly. And I say that because I heard first that mostly what we're seeing is the city of Austin, and then I heard, no, the reports we're getting are from Crossroads. And I'm not sure, are we saying that the reports we're getting from Crossroads are as a result of a water main breaking or not? We're not getting they're not the ones going to his house and saying, we want to take a sample today and that kind of thing.
Crossroads does all of our water testing for us in the city, both if there is a leak or a break that requires some extra testing or the average testing. I can't speak necessarily to what that report requires, because the reason that City of Austin provides us so much information for that report is because they are the sole source of our water. We are just wholesale customers of the City of Austin. So I can't speak to exactly what parts. So City of Austin sends us a bunch of stuff that goes to Crossroads. They use that to produce the CCR, and like I said, I'm happy to pass any questions on to them about how that's done or what's done, but that's
Can we just make it
Could we
that
do
I'm
that?
sorry. an annual thing that when this is available, that they present the findings to the utility commission and make note of any things that should be concerning? We'll obviously be looking over it as well. But if there are things that every single year comes out to 0.16 and it has to be below 0.17, and you wonder, is that really how it's supposed to be? Maybe just have them give a quick presentation. It's not a very long report, but to let us know the status of the water. They should be, I'm guessing they do this for other communities. I don't know if it's, I assume it's available.
And specifically the differentiation between the City of Austin samples, which are done from Lake Austin and other areas, but that has almost, that is only a very specific part of the equation of how the water comes through to our individual homes, because it has to go through our system.
That's right.
Once it has been through that.
Right.
And the issue is that there are issues with our system, as we well know, that will have an impact, like leaking copper from very old main lines and so forth.
Right, I don't know if this is prorated or weighted, you know, like a weighted average.
And so the difference between the City of Austin report and the water samples from Rollingwood through Crossroads is what I personally would really like to understand.
So I don't know if this requires a motion or anything, but can we have Crossroads provide us, present to us this report, their findings on it, what we should be concerned about from their perspective, and then if they can give us, if there's a way to differentiate between City of Austin samples and the samples from Clark's house, just so we understand. Again, are they saying, well, look, we tested 40 samples from City of Austin, and we had our 3 samples from Rollingwood, and when you weigh all that together, you're safe. That doesn't mean that the 3 samples from Rollingwood didn't have potentially higher levels. Can they give us that type of information? Maybe just follow up and say,
I'm sure they
let's see if we
can.
can find out what they can tell us on that.
Yes, absolutely. I would be happy to ask them. And again, if there are specific technical questions, I think last year I know they provided responses to a list of questions, and I'm happy to pass those on again. I'm happy to have them here next month. So I will reach out to them and see what they're able to provide.
Well, now we all know what the word turbidity means, so.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else on that item? All right. Well, I put all my stuff away. I believe that was the last item. So if there are no other comments, I'm happy to open it for comments. I would move to adjourn. Thank you very much.